So the first time I rode Slickrock Trail was on a motorcycle. That was in '69. I rode it with a friend of mine, and it was terrifying.
Coming up to try out the Slickrock Bike Trail for the first time was pretty scary, to be truthful.
My first time to Slickrock itself was 1985, on our way back from Crested Butte. It was kind of a moonscape.
Well, we first went to Moab in the first to the middle part of the 1960s. The town of Moab was probably like 2 streets long.
First time I visited Slickrock Trail was about 1951. My grandparents had an Army Jeep, and I wanted to ride in that Army Jeep. So that's where we went, with Slickrock.
My dad would actually bring me up here to the Slickrock Bike Trail and drop me off when I was 11, and I would just ride around until I was kind of done riding around and ride back to town.
It's petrified sand dunes, and so it's up and down, up and down, and up and down. I really enjoy that.
It's really on almost every mountain biker's bucket list.
There are so many locals that come up here every single day to go hike, bike, walk their dogs, just to go out and see the sunset up here at the Slickrock Trail.
It's an opportunity to get out and challenge yourself. It's just you and the bike and the wind in your face, and what more would you want?
Back in 1963, this old guy named Andy Anderson was a local mechanic, and he had 2 of these scooters at his shop. And after working in his shop for a little bit, he says, you know, we got to go out on Slickrock, ride these scooters. But I looked at the darn thing, and it has this Maytag washing machine drive to drive this front wheel, and it has another Maytag washing machine drive to drive the rear wheel. And he said, this thing goes anywhere you think you can go on the Slickrock. I says, well, let's go. This is a very unique vehicle. Andy passed away sometime in the early 90s, and his vehicles and stuff kind of disappeared. And a friend of mine in his shop, here's one of Andy's old scooters, and I says, my God, I rode that sucker 30 years ago. And he said, really? And he says, well, why don't you just take it home with you and see if you can clean it up. So I brought it home. I started putting an hour in, an hour there. Yesterday, I actually fired it up. It's been a pleasure and a real honor to be able to put this vehicle back together.
When I was working for the Times Independent, my friends, they rode with me on Honda Trail 90s to various points of interest on the Red Rock. They found out the joy of travel on 2 wheels.
It was a very quiet town because it was not tourist oriented when we first started going. We towed an MP Roadster, towed it behind our 1964 Pontiac. It had the metal body, and it would take all of the rough and tumble that we knew that we were going to be giving it in the backcountry. And it was very comfortable. Well, Dick Wilson we met because Dick Wilson was basically involved in the same type of thing. We got on real well. Dick had a dune buggy. He liked to go into the backcountry and take pictures just like we did. Wrote articles for the local newspaper and invited us up to his house, so we got to know Brevin and the children. And we just stayed friends over the years. Because we went back every year, we always connected and say, oh, now you gotta go see this place, and can we go see here? Can we go there? And he would go with us. The articles that Dick was writing was exploring trails. He blazed a lot of trails and made a lot of them accessible to two-wheeled vehicles, just opening up all around Moab so that everybody could see what there was and how to get there. And I know that that was his passion.
The beauty of the place, for one, was its pulling attraction.
He enjoyed the outdoors. He was always an outdoor person. But he really decided that Moab was a place where a lot of tourists could come and have fun. So he kind of took it upon himself to figure out, what can I do to attract people to Moab? And one of the things that he did is he started writing books so that people, when they came to town, he had several little books that he had written, could buy the books and could go out and explore themselves. And that's basically what he did for many years, just trying to get people to see the beauty of Moab, Utah. And that's what's so cool about it.
It was about in 1969. A fellow by the name of Dick Wilson came into my office. I was the area manager at that time. And he said, I have an idea for a bike trail up out of Moab near the sand flats that I'd like to have you consider. And I said, Dick, let's take a look at it.
There were no trails on the Slickrock. The only trails that they had were some trails made by horses and cows, but there were some areas that were not traveled very much at all.
We got in his dune buggy and traveled up to the sand flats toward Arches National Monument. We came close to the river, Colorado River Gorge, and after we got through with it, I told Dick, let's move ahead with this bike trail. So Dick, he outlined the bike trail.
I chose which ridges they would go down and which mountains they would ascend, and they asked me to go ahead and mark them with white, which I did with chalk to start with, and then a few days later with paint.
You start into a situation like that and wonder, you know, what's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years? Is it really going to catch on? Hey, it caught on with fire. The word got around.
For the Bureau of Land Management to work with local folks to create this trail, little did they know what would become of it. This world-famous trail that, you know, you've seen magazines in New Zealand that have the Slickrock Bike Trail on it. People from all over the world are familiar with it.
There's lots of people that dedicate themselves to getting something to happen. And Dick Wilson was able to get the BLM to let him put lines on the trail. He's the man that got it legal, and God bless him for it, because we wouldn't have it if it wasn't for Dick Wilson, and I really appreciate that.
But I want to emphasize that it was the friends that went with me that helped me to propose which parts of Slickrock we should go. When the trail was established, it captured the imagination of thousands of people who had to come and see what it was that I had been describing in my weekly articles.
I sent a copy of the map to the district manager in Monticello, who in turn sent the map to the state director in Salt Lake City, Utah. The state director came back says, "Excellent idea. Pursue it with vigor." And he said, "And we'll have a dedication ceremony commemorating this important step." So we went ahead, and when we had the dedication, we actually selected a queen to be there to add a little beauty to it. And the state director was there, and he presided and kind of took charge. And from then on, it was just pretty much history. Dick just deserves a lot of credit on that bike trail. He'd go exploring around Moab, and then he would write an article for the newspaper the next week and explain the unique situations that he ran into. So he was really involved all the way through.
And I rode my Honda Trail 90 to explore the trails.
You don't have to worry about a Trail 90 getting up a hill. They go so slow, they had such a low gear. So there was no worries about a Trail 90 getting anywhere at any time. They were great.
It has a high-low range gearbox that allows you to have 4 high gears and 4 low gears, which makes it extremely capable off-road as well as capable on-road as well. We like to come out to Slickrock because of the legacy here and to reconnect with the people who have come here before us on the same exact equipment. It's like coming to a religious holy land, coming back at least twice a year.
In the 70s, early 70s, we were all involved with the mining industry. And in '82, the uranium industry fell apart. So we all lost our jobs at the same time. How I ever talked my brother and my dad into starting a bicycle shop, which was, unheard of in the '80s in rural towns.
My parents, Hank Barlow and Kim Schapper, had started Mountain Bike Magazine in Crested Butte.
The very first issue, we came to Moab, Utah to shoot it on the Slickrock Trail. It wasn't that we didn't have any good riding in Crested Butte, Colorado, which we all thought was the center of the universe, but to get out to Moab and be able to ride where no one had ever even known it existed, it immediately blew the lid off of mountain biking in Moab, Utah.
This was the first color publication about the sport of mountain biking, and it was a sport that barely anyone was doing. It was super niche. It was just kind of, the bikes were just being kind of invented and evolving at a super fast rate of speed. And Mountain Bike Magazine became the first outlet for people all around the country to read about what was going on.
Trying to put this magazine together about this new sport that we were convinced was going to be a lifestyle and not just a fad. All of a sudden, there was an article, a little blurb in Time magazine about Moab and the Slickrock Trail, and then Outside magazine about Moab and the Slickrock Trail. So there we were on the world stage, and people started to come.
And it just took people's breath away. It was so different than anything anyone had seen before. And I think it was part of what really kicked off the success of that magazine. Was the first issue was just made such an impact, and it was because of what makes Moab so special and what makes the Slickrock Trail so special.
At the end of '85, we decided to have a Halloween party and invite all of our reps. Well, Hank Barlow, who started Mountain Bike Magazine, got word of it and said that next year we were going to have a Fat Tire Festival. Put us under the gun. Well, we had one. We got sponsorships. We did a poker run around Slickrock Trail. We give away bikes doing that.
This was a big event that attracted people from all over the country. It was always in the end of October, kind of ending around Halloween, and there'd be a big Halloween costume party as part of it. It was just a lot of fun.
That would attract almost all of the major custom mountain bike builders that we had in the United States.
The fabricators from California like Mark Slade at Wilderness Trail Bikes and Joe Breeze and Scott Nickel from Ibis.
They would gather here year after year, showing off their latest product, and it had just evolved from there as a testing ground for these companies, and if it didn't break here, it was good.
Because the Slickrock Trail is that demanding, and these engineers know that if their brakes fail on the Slickrock Trail, they need to go back and rebuild them. And if they work here, they know they can go anywhere in the world.
In 1985, it was really at the bottom. There was very little economic activity at all.
Moab was in dire straits. In the early 80s, you could buy a house here for $10,000. Things have sort of turned around since then.
And the powers that be were still, really oriented to mining for developing the public lands rather than recreating on them. But all of a sudden, this horde of mountain bikers starting to come in. Other bike shops started up, and restaurants and motels started doing more business. And I think the biking community really turned Moab around way before other users started coming here a lot.
The Slickrock Trail being the initial focal point for mountain biking brought in enough people as mountain bikers to create a significant shoulder season both in the spring and in the fall. They just made it possible for many businesses to stay open longer, new businesses to start, and that just led to a whole chain of events that largely contributed to what Moab is as a recreation destination today.
It's impossible to overestimate how much of an impact the Slickrock Trail has had on the economy of Moab. It really just has drawn so much attention to the really unique landscape that we have and all the different ways that you can enjoy it. So it's really, fueled, what Moab has become, which is, a very developed recreation economy. For what we have, we owe a lot to that one trail.
I started coming out here about 20 years ago with groups of friends from Colorado, and we'd ride all the trails, different trails every time we came, but we always rode Slickrock because it's special, it's unique.
Moab is one of the most amazing places for mountain biking because we have just such incredible terrain and scenery to go with it.
It was way more fun on a bicycle than it was on a motorcycle. It's just spectacular riding.
Technology is constantly improving and changing, and so the Trail 90 bikes are nothing compared to what we have nowadays with suspension and the ability to navigate just gnarly terrain.
When we first started doing tours out here, we were just riding rigid fat tire mountain bikes, no suspension whatsoever. And since then, of course, shocks have been invented and it's made things a lot more comfortable. You can see things better when you have suspension.
And then they made the suspension bikes better and better and better, and by the year 2000, suspension bikes were it. And the hardtail and the rides that would beat you up and take hours were over with. You could ride the whole Slickrock Trail and ride it again and again, or other trails.
It's really more challenging than you might expect, just steep ups and down. I describe it as a roller coaster, so you're kind of up and down. There's not a lot of extended downhill, not a lot of extended uphill. You can't be afraid to use your granny gear out here.
For one thing, you almost can't lose traction. You can practically go up a vertical wall and not lose traction, and that's amazing.
I love the silence of the mountain bike, and I think this is one of the best spots in the Moab area to see the sunsets.
Moab has been identified as the mountain bike capital of the world. Slickrock is one of the premier rides of Moab, so it is definitely very important to Moab.
Just be respectful mainly to the environment and don't go off into these beautiful gardens.
Mountain biking is what you make it, right? You can come out here and try to do the whole loop in an hour, you know, or you can come out and spend 6 hours on the first 2 miles of the trail just hitting little jumps on the trail and just enjoying every piece of it. And that's what's amazing about Slickrock. It is so different for each user, you know, whether you're just figuring out how your tires grip on it or whether you're, you know, jumping these bowls and these cool berms and stuff that are just naturally here. The trail is really what you make it.
The word of mouth is the best kind of advertising you can get. So everybody who went up there was just overwhelmed and loved it and would go back and tell their friends. And it's still that way. I mean, there's still people who come out just because they heard that Slickrock is the place to ride, you know. And it is. It'll make you a good rider or it'll hurt you. So.
It happened back in 1993 when teenagers started having their big parties on the sand flats. It got to be really ugly.
This place was getting overrun. There wasn't enough toilets. There weren't any designated campsites, so we had health violations happening up here, resource violations. I can remember coming up here in the spring of 1993 and being shocked.
Without any developed facilities, toilets, campgrounds, there was serious resource damage taking place.
People were camping everywhere. I saw some folks sit down around a tree and set it on fire. That was their campfire.
There was one place that the kids called the glass factory. That's where the teenagers went for their parties. And there was so much broken glass that we couldn't even begin to clean it up. It was just glass everywhere. The sheriff went up to try to disrupt what was happening. It was just a riot up there. And he had to retreat. He pulled his deputies out because he could see that if he stayed there, it was going to be real trouble.
Back in '93 is when it really hit a critical mass, and the local community decided that something had to be done. The Bureau of Land Management had limited staffing and was willing to help, but didn't really know exactly how to take charge of it. And that's when a group of local folks, Craig Bigler, Kim Schappert, and Bill Hedden, got together with the support of Grand County Council and submitted an AmeriCorps grant. That was the beginning of what is now the Sand Flats Recreation Area and the partnership between the Grand County and the Bureau of Land Management here in Moab. So this is an incredibly unique situation. It's a collaborative land management.
Because the county, we could collect entrance fees.
At that time, it was before the fee demonstration program, and so monies, if they were collected by the federal government, they would go to Washington, D.C., and it would be hard to get those funds back. So by forming this partnership with the county, starting in 1994, they were able to keep the funds here.
There wasn't a designated campsite up here. There wasn't a single toilet up here. The parking lot was very rudimentary and dirt, not paved, not striped. There were no shade shelters. There was no trash collection. But through that partnership, the Collaborative Land Management Partnership, Grand County was able to benefit, as was the Bureau of Land Management, and then most importantly, the resources up here and the participants, the recreationists, were the ones that benefited. And it's still that way now.
The first manager, Craig Bigler, he was able to get a 3-year AmeriCorps grant. And he hired a great group of people, very energetic.
So we started up and babes in the woods. We didn't, it was a new problem. We didn't know how to solve it, so we just started doing things. And the kids have been driving all over the sand flats. And we tried to delineate where it was okay to drive and to camp by putting big rocks. And oh boy, the next spring when they came, They didn't care about those rocks. They just drove right over them, all over the place.
They were able to use the fee money all for the development of facilities because the AmeriCorps grant covered the staff costs. So that quickly produced fire rings and toilets and that basic management infrastructure that was needed to administer the area and start protecting our beautiful desert resource.
We started working with the community, with the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations to build community support for management. Because at that time, the community wasn't really enthused about managing public land. It wasn't too easy. There was some pretty serious opposition.
It used to be free camping up there, and I was pretty much against them when they started charging for it. I was proven wrong. It's been a really good deal. They make enough money that they can keep the campgrounds up. They can keep the trash pulled up. It's a good deal. So I'm willing to say that I was wrong on that.
First thing we did after we got the grant was we set up the Stewardship Committee.
This committee is made up of local community members that represent motorized and non-motorized users.
We hired high school kids, we hired older folks, and each of those people worked tirelessly every day to protect the resource that people came from all over the world by that point to enjoy.
Stewardship is important, especially in the sense that if just left to its own devices, if this were not taken care of, if there weren't stewards of this area, it would get torn up.
Our desert environment is actually very fragile, and if we don't take care of it, it will literally turn to dust and blow away. The plants won't be able to grow. The landscape would change dramatically if we don't take care of it.
The Stewardship Committee really took it seriously. It was the first time a community had a chance to sort of help mold the public use of the public land in a way that would suit the community. And that's important.
Over the years, the Bureau of Land Management Office in Moab and local government have worked cooperatively very well to develop local solutions to local issues.
Grand County takes care of the day-to-day management and operations of the recreation area. So what that means is we can take care of the fee collection at the entrance station where we're orienting people to the area, talking about safety, handing out maps. We also do the maintenance of the campgrounds and the trails. And all of this happens with the fee money collected through the entrance station. So we are a completely self-sustaining entity. It's an enterprise fund under the county, and all the money collected stays right here for operations. So when the partnership was set up, I don't think anyone envisioned that the Sand Flats Recreation Area would not only be able to fund its day-to-day operations, but also improvements. And over the last decade, we've done some pretty major improvements. And these improvements were needed because of the increase in visitation. The Slickrock Bike Trail popularity just has continued through the years. And with this increase in visitation, we have continued challenges. So in the last decade, we've built the Hell's Revenge parking lot and put in a toilet. We've made improvements to the Slickrock Bike Trail with new updated kiosks and interpretive information, and built some shade structures.
There's just wonderful collaboration and communication regularly on projects, whether it's adding new campgrounds, which is coming up again. There's just always such good communication and collaboration. Is why it works well.
Don't bust the crust. Now that was our main approach, and the kids on the stewardship team really took that to heart. That crust was just something we practically worshipped. That was the rallying point and made it feasible for the visitors to understand why they had to behave, why they should stay on designated trails.
The purpose that the biological soil crust serves, it retains water, so when it rains it's like a sponge, so the dry desert has a chance to just have a little bit more water for a while. It prevents erosion because everything is bound together, and it fixes nitrogen for the plants so they get their nutrients. The biological soil crust is also super fragile. One tire track or footprint is just a slice that can scar the land for a long time. So it's really important to stay on the trail and stay out of the little pockets of vegetation and soils.
It is a gorgeous place in the spring and the fall. It's just pure delight.
The Slickrock Bike Trail, just the landscape, it's so unique. The views are spectacular, especially if you come up here during the end of the day and the sun is setting and just the light is just awe-inspiring.
You do smile more in the uphill on the motorcycle.
I think a lot of people get a little bit scared about trying to ride up certain things or down certain things, but your tires stick to the terrain so well.
With Slickrock Trail being on Navajo sandstone, having been sand dunes gives the sinuosity, and then the petrification of the sand dunes makes them roll a lot easier than actually riding modern day sand dunes.
Not everyone believes it, but it's the smoothest trail in Moab is the Slickrock Trail. Some of the steepest ups and downs to be found, but as far as on your body and your bike, it's got great flow. And if you trust it, it's super smooth and incredible experience out here.
People hike the Slickrock Trail, and I and a lot of other individuals love to trail run on it. It's a fun one to just run and go see the big vistas and make these loops and everything.
The dominant rock that you see here at the Slickrock Trail is the Navajo sandstone, and it was laid down in an environment that was like the Sahara Desert, just miles upon miles of sand dunes. Right around us here is just the compressed sand dunes, and if you look around you can see diagonal lines that represent the way that the wind was depositing the sediments.
It's just wonderful being on the Sand Flats Committee, in part because I'm giving back to some place that I feel has given me a lot in my life. I've been diabetic for coming up on 44 years. I'm not the kind of person who gets up and does my due diligence and exercise and keeping healthy and all this sort of stuff. And I don't have to have that kind of discipline because Slickrock is here. Slickrock draws me to it in such a way to where I can't help but get out and ride it. It's almost like if you found out that bacon and cake and pie were the healthiest foods possible, you wouldn't have to be forced into eating that. And that's what Slickrock does for my physicality, for my health.
There's no other place on planet Earth like it, and that's why so many people come here to enjoy this trail.
It was a gathering place for all the mountain bikers that would come to Moab. You had to go to the Slickrock Trail.
Mountain biking now is an Olympic sport and has been for 20 years. People are riding all over the world, and they still haven't found anything more spectacular than the Slickrock Trail. It's just as impactful as it was 35 years ago when it was on the cover of Mountain Bike magazine.
Slickrock Trail for the community it's something that's used and loved by all locals, because we can come up here at sunset after we've worked 10-hour a day and just ride around the practice loop, right out the main loop a ways, and it's just such a unique terrain, unique surface that, it's like nothing else on Earth.
It's been known as the world famous Slickrock Trail. It's still that way today, and even though there's all these other options, it never gets old.
We have easily over 100,000 people globally come here to just ride that trail. It's that unique and that special of a type of a trail to go ride.
I think the reason that it's been so successful, this partnership, is because of the love of this trail. The Slickrock Bike Trail has so much meaning. It's been here for 50 years. Has so much meaning to the community, has so much meaning to our visitors. This trail means so much to so many people over the last 50 years, and I think it will continue to mean just as much in the future.